Welcome to Season 2, Episode 8, where we discuss House of Hammer Part 3. Sasha will be back next week, but until then, we heard rumors that she got her inspiration from Catch Me If You Can. She's been masquerading as a flight attendant because she really likes those scarves. Let's get into it. Dear listeners, just when you thought that it couldn't get any worse, it's about to get funnier. Sincerely, Tactless.
I'm Sasha. I'm a girl with a warm heart, and I'm already sick of your shit, so don't try me. But I still love you.
I'm Tony. I'm a frustrated musician who will tell you to your face, being a dog mom is not a thing.
Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm the tiny lady marmalade that holds this turd sandwich together. All right, and now on to part 3 of House of Hammer,
the third and final episode, which is kind of a mix of the first two, really. Like, it started off just Army and his disgustingness. Second episode was a lot of family history. And then this one, aptly tying it all together. But, you know, not as sleazy as episode 1 was, but still kind of nasty.
You still want to take a shower afterward, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, it's still a little gnarly, but I guess it's kind of convoluted, honestly. I was trying to think of a good way to split it up and go from one thing to another, but it's really not. This episode doesn't necessarily flow that well, to be honest with you. When I was watching it, I was like, it kind of jumps around from one thing to another. So I guess in similar fashion, we'll just kind of start with the beginning and jump around too. But it does end up kind of tying some things up, so that you at least, you know, see all of these things for what they are. And I thought it was cool, kind of jumping ahead, just like I said I was going to. Courtney, his ex-girlfriend, gets to meet his aunt who wrote the book, which I thought was kind of cool, just because, you know, if you're ever in a situation like that, having someone who understands how you're feeling or what the situation looks like is really helpful to your own mental health, let alone have somebody who's dealt with the same people. So I'm sure that was really helpful for her to be able to connect in somebody else, you know, with somebody else in that way, so that she felt like, you know, I'm not alone in this. You know, this other person, she grew up with that garbage, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of a cool thing for them to do.
That was kind of the underlying theme of this episode, wasn't it? Was the camaraderie, the support in the women that were affected by this family, and then also their impact on women that might be in a similar situation or might be going, you know, could possibly go into a situation like this, and knowing what to look for, kind of a thing. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I have to say, though, as a weird, funny side thing, every time they said Occidental Petroleum, they call it Oxy, and I was like, Oxycontin or Oxy, like acne medication, you know, like that's what it brought to mind.
Yeah, it's such a weird. I'm sure there was a reason behind the name, but it just, if I hear it real quick too, I think accidental.
Yeah.
And
that's appropriate though, isn't it? Accidental.
Yeah,
Petroleum.
It kind of is.
They don't have a good track record.
Not at all. Yeah, that's in there too, actually. They're was it one of their like offshore drilling platforms exploding or something?
Yeah, and I guess that was a massive tragedy, which that's in the North Sea. That's scary to think.
I think they said 160 people died or something like that.
Yeah,
that's a heck of a lot of people.
It really is. I know. And you think the the Prince of Wales and Princess Diana were there at the memorial for
Mhm.
this. That's how big a deal it was.
Yeah.
And crazy. But yeah, to go back sort of to the beginning, we do hear a little bit more from Casey at the beginning of this episode. It was interesting too because she used the terminology, the love bombing, the
Mhm.
controlling and stuff in relation to Army, who's her nephew, and she also said she wasn't surprised because she lived through how
Yeah.
many generations of this madness kind of a thing. I also thought it was interesting because she was coming forward, a friend of hers warned her like to basically go dark, right? To act like
Yeah.
she was hiding out from the world.
Yeah, which you can't really blame them for cautioning her like that. It seems like this family almost has unlimited resources to get, gosh, I mean, look at his grandpa got somebody basically got him well, I guess bought his freedom, you know, got him out of a murder charge.
Yeah, he
So
bought him out. Oof.
I wouldn't doubt that they would, try to hire somebody to go after her or try to, mess with her or ruin her in some way.
Mhm.
Also, um, the one woman that was married to Julian and left him, how they said that Armand told her he was going to ruin her, and he effectively did in court, right?
Yeah, he did.
So
He
not only
really
do they
did.
have a track record of this abuse, but they have a track record of trying to get revenge against anybody who kind of does them wrong in their eyes. So, I think it was good advice. Have an unlisted number, always watch your back, make sure no one's following you, all that kind of stuff. Because once you expose something like this, I think I'll take a small page from Dr. Ramani's book here. Um, a big thing with narcissists is that feeling of shame when they're exposed. And this is definitely shining a light all over this nastiness, and they're gonna feel that shame, and that's when the rage usually comes out. So, it would make sense to kind of buckle down and prepare for whatever backlash she gets, because I'm
Mhm.
sure there's going to be something.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's all about how they look to the world and yeah, the
Yeah.
power that they wield over others. And if you go off script,
Oh,
forget it.
forget it. Yep. Yeah, the people even say, I think it was Courtney that said when she first talked to Army, he was love bombing her, and he very much put on that persona of the good looking actor that he puts out for the public. And
Mhm.
then slowly you see, oh, privately, this is a completely different person. So, they're very committed to putting on that facade wherever they can.
Very much so. And speaking of Courtney, at the beginning of this particular episode, she talks about a little bit about going into rehab, and it
Hmm.
turns out they were kind of treating her for PTSD and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And then she said, and I quote, she felt small, disgusting, and ugly as a result of this. Like that was so spot on to me. Like, you're treated like this and you're the one that feels like crap. And he's going on, and as we find out, found a 22-year-old to put up with
Yeah.
him for a little while after this.
Yeah, we meet another girl that he decides to date, and Courtney mentions that when she's in rehab, somebody texted her to tell her about his new girlfriend, and she seems kind of regretful that she took the bait, but she ended up looking up this girl and just being upset, that he went from doing this to her. She's now in rehab because of what he did, and now he's doing the same things to a 22-year-old. Obviously, another beautiful young lady. And she mentions that, in looking at her social media posts, she can see bruises on her body and stuff like that she noticed, obviously big indicators that, Army is obviously doing the same thing to this poor girl that she did to her.
Yeah, those pictures were pretty disturbing, and like she was posing with them, like they look like they were Instagram photos or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, he reportedly had told her to wear the bruises with the badge of pride, and they were like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what the what?" Yeah, your abuser's bruises. And you know what else came to mind? It was kind of crazy. I had this flashback. I don't know if you remember. I think it was like the late 90s when Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton would wear like vials of each other's blood around each other's
Yes.
necks.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I was like, up until that point, like that was the creepiest, weird celebrity crap that we'd heard of. And now we got this nut job,
Yeah. And I guess he
Yeah.
was I guess her and Courtney ended up comparing notes to kind of hop forward a little bit, and I'll come back. But
Mhm.
I guess he literally did the same things with the what was her name again?
Oh,
I forget her
Paige.
name.
Yeah, Paige.
Paige. Yeah, so he did the same things with Paige that he did with Courtney. Take her to the same motel,
Mhm.
playing the same music. She said that he traveled around with ropes and knives and all sorts of BDSM stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and she felt the same way. Like she couldn't say no. Like
Mhm.
she was gonna just let him do what he wanted to do, which um, they end up focusing on a specific instance where he tells her that he's gonna put his initials on her and cuts his initials into her skin to where
Mhm.
she's bleeding, and then decides that that's not enough for him too, and ends up like licking up the blood and just being super creepy. um I think it was also good too that they brought in another woman that was I guess what you call subject matter expert on BDSM, um because I personally don't know a whole lot about it myself either, but she was outlining things like this. you know his behavior is not indicative of what people experience when they're practicing BDSM the way that it was intended to be practiced. I mean, the dude is he's a predator. He's taking advantage.
Mhm.
He's setting up these situations so that they do feel helpless and really enjoying that part of it, which it has nothing to do with the way BDSM is practiced. But he's also, and she mentioned this, it seemed like he was going after women who didn't know anything about it so that he could basically train them to be okay with whatever he decided to do.
Mhm.
Which, I mean, that to me just reminded me of all those stories you hear of pedophiles like breeding children, basically,
Yeah,
bringing
grooming.
them up
Yeah.
and grooming them and trying to get them into this headspace of being accepting
Mhm.
of this disgusting thing or this evil thing or whatever they're doing. I just really struck a chord with me, not only because she was quite a bit younger, but just because he seemed to start a relationship off on a really high note,
Mhm.
bringing him up, love bombing the heck out of him, and then slowly introducing them into this stuff. And it just really speaks of grooming, and that's exactly what he was doing, trying to find somebody who's maybe weaker than him or ignorant of what he was trying to accomplish,
Mhm.
and then molding them into whatever he wanted, which is, I mean, that's the ultimate power play for somebody like this, but it's sick.
It is. It's so depraved, and he such predatory behavior, as you said. Like
Oh yeah.
he knew, and that's why the narcissist thing stands out to me, because he knew who to look for. He knew the signs of, who would be receptive to this kind of stuff. Like we've talked about before, I mean, probably if a guy told me personally, oh yeah, I'm gonna smoke your ribs and eat them, I'd be like, oh yeah, bye. But
Yeah.
he knew how to ease into this to where oh yeah, he wasn't serious, or whatever. But yeah, if he's licking her blood, I imagine that he's probably pretty serious about that.
That was really disturbing to me too, is that Paige even, because the other one said that he, mentioned cannibalistic ideas and stuff like that, but even Paige said that he talked about trying to find a surgeon that would remove one of her ribs so that he could smoke it and eat it. Like, that is just beyond sick. Like, this dude is extremely unwell. And he got her into the headspace to be able to blow off that comment.
Right? Yeah, because that's disgusting. That's
It
like
is.
horror film level stuff.
And just to think that he was so good, well, I guess is so good at manipulating people to that point is really disturbing.
Mhm.
Like, the dude does not need to be among the population of anywhere. He needs to be locked up. Like, that's not safe. He's crossed so many lines, and he's become very proficient in these skills of evil that he does not need to be among us anymore, I don't think.
I agree.
And I know that I mentioned this in the first episode when we were talking about him, but I really wonder if there are other women that he did this to who maybe didn't come forward or say anything. Are there other women that maybe he took it too far and choked them and they're no longer with us? Who knows? I wouldn't put it
Yeah.
past him if he does all the other stuff that it isn't something that he's capable of.
I do
So
wonder, yeah, because and they talk about this toward the end. You get vitriol from his fans, where they like the Charmies or something like that.
yeah,
Death threat, like the common troll stuff. You get death threats and all that stuff, and then I imagine that would deter a lot of people
yeah,
from coming forward. Be like, yeah, I'm not gonna go up against this or have to testify and talk about it.
yeah.
As you've said, we absolutely admire these women for even speaking out, because
Oh yeah.
who wants to relive this madness? Not me, for sure.
Well, and the other part of it is the type of person that they prey upon is a very introspective, empathetic, loving person.
Hmm.
And you can tell that his relationship with all these women affected them greatly because of that. And gosh, if you feel that way and you get that kind of pushback from people,
Hmm.
it is extremely difficult to keep going. If you have any issues with self-confidence, if you well, I honestly, as an empathetic person myself, if anyone tells me something negative about myself, I think about it. It goes in there, and you assess it. If they say, "Oh, you're, a rude person," or whatever, even if it's not true, it gets in. And I think that's one of those qualities that these narcissists love to see, because it allows them to control your thoughts and your own emotions and how you deal with things so easily.
Hmm.
And it makes it extremely difficult afterwards to talk about it, to bring it to light for other people. And that's why I really do think it's huge that these girls are talking out and being so open about it. Because, man, it's emotionally draining. It really is.
Very much so. It's beyond reason. Like, this is not anything that anyone should ever have to deal with. And
No.
like, even having the vocabulary to talk about it is so admirable. Like, this is not like, oh yeah, everybody, at one point learns to drive, or everybody at one point, goes on their first date and it's terrible or whatever. But like, this is not something that you're prepared to deal with, and this is not something that you're prepared
Yeah.
to talk about most of the time.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah. And
insane.
truthfully, I'm sure that they may have edited their interviews a little bit because I would have too if this happened, but I'm sure it's extremely emotional
Mhm.
for all of these women to talk about it. I'm sure there were moments where they just couldn't speak, or they just broke down, because talking about it, thinking about it puts you back there,
Mhm.
and to talk about it in such a public area, like for a documentary, is uh, I can't imagine what that feels like. But hats off to them. And honestly too,
Yeah.
even before this all came out is when Army's aunt wrote her book too, which is bold. you know that was before this stuff was really in the limelight too, and she took that step, which you know I think, even if it was literally just for her to be able to write these things down and put it on paper, that is a big step towards healing from something like
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I think that was part of it, right? The catharsis of getting it out,
Hmm.
whether anybody read it or not. It was just
That's
to
huge.
get it off of her, because she did talk about, oddly enough, she moved back in with her dad after Armand passed away,
Hmm.
and he was at that time still addled and crazy on drugs. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until after she moved out and she was in like a dramatization, almost like one of those unsolved mysteries things or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It brought back, like, she had like flashbacks, the PTSD was coming back, and she finally realized, oh shoot, like all this stuff did happen to me, and she had suppressed it for so long. And that's like, you could totally relate to that, right? Like, you're just surviving, you don't want to think about it, you just kind of deal or whatever, and
Hmm.
then something will trigger that
Yep.
memory, and it's on.
Something sets it off and you're right back there again. Yeah,
Hmm.
and she said the guy that she was doing the little whatever it's called, the reenactment with, or whatever they were doing, she ended up hurting him
Hmm.
because she just reacted, which obviously it's no fault of hers, but man, that's a real thing. The PTSD is no joke.
Hmm.
And especially with something like that, it's something that so many things can trigger it. Just even seeing somebody who looks like the person who abused you can like put you right back there. And
Hmm.
it's a weird feeling, you know. She even admitted in this episode, we were kind of on a cliffhanger on the last one, with the question, but she did admit that her father even not only abused her mentally, but also sexually too. She didn't go into detail about it, which totally don't blame her, but she did admit to that too, which I can't imagine as a young kid seeing all these things going on, having it done to you.
Hmm.
Um, I don't, I don't even want to know what kind of demons she's still fighting with today, because I'm sure that's just a lifelong battle for her.
Hmm.
That's such an impressionable age to be exposed to all that stuff.
It really is, and it colors your whole perception, like, going forward, right? And she was kind of dealing with it later as an adult,
Hmm.
so that it colored her relationships with other people, her family, all that other stuff too, because she saw it through the lens of having to survive and not necessarily thriving. You're always in that survival mode, kind of a thing, and maybe holding in people at arm's length.
Yeah, yeah, you really get kind of standoffish when it comes to any relationship, because you don't want to fall into that trap again. If you climb out of that hole, you really would do anything to not go back in,
Hmm.
But that was gosh, that was just a crazy story to go through and wade through all of that stuff. But the thing that gets me at the end, they say that Army's still not been not been charged. He's not in custody. I mean, he did the celebrity PR thing of going to some sort of rehab. And I'm sure that was something that his attorney instructed him to do immediately to give a certain appearance to the public. but the dude does not need to be out among us, you know, to be able to accomplish what he accomplished numerous times. And these are just the times we know about, you know, it just it baffles my mind that certain people, like, you know, I mean, you could take any celebrity, you know, any celebrity that was accused of misconduct or rape or whatever the case is, it seems like they kind of drag him in immediately, doesn't it? Like, what makes Army
Yeah.
different that he's not getting pulled in? It seems like there's a good amount of evidence against this dude. I mean, these women saved messages, they saved pictures, who knows what else that we didn't see. So what's going on there, you know?
I do wonder because right as we're recording this, Danny Masterson is in court on uh allegations of assault.
Yeah,
And that seemed to move fairly quickly. I mean, it takes a while to get to court, of course, but the charges, came pretty fairly quickly. My
yeah.
my only supposition in this case is what you discussed earlier, is possibly there may be more people coming forward and they want to have all the charges, or
That's possible.
they're waiting to see, yeah, how far this goes, because maybe they've got a big fat case against him, and maybe, yeah, people that didn't want to be public necessarily.
Yeah, I'd be curious if, you know, some women didn't even know what was going on until the documentary came out, you know, and saw it and came forward and were like, "Oh my God, this guy."
Hmm.
You know, I don't know. I guess anything's possible. It seemed like the dude was just prowling around trying to find victims constantly. So I don't know. I just hate that that idea that these women came forward. They said what they said. They're brave enough to give up all this information. You
Hmm.
know, some of it, you know, I'm sure is shameful to them, you know,
Yeah.
to show all people, you know, what you went through and all of that stuff, and to have authorities not take him into custody probably probably is really, you know, disappointing for them almost, wouldn't you think?
I would think so. There's a lot on the line here, in addition to the public outrage, the trolls, the threats, and all that stuff. You're also
Yeah.
admitting that you fell for this crap. I mean, essentially, I mean, he's a master manipulator, obviously, and it's not their fault.
No, not at all.
But it's still, I'm sure it's like, oh, like now I have to admit to the world that, yeah, I went along with this madness.
Yeah, it does. It comes with some level of shame that they're gonna have to carry around. You
Hmm.
know, even if no one blames them, you always blame yourself. You
Oh,
know,
for
I
sure.
did from my relationship.
Hmm.
It happens. It was really hard for me to talk about for a long time. I can't even imagine, you know, what they're going through. And then to have essentially nothing happening at the moment is
Hmm.
just it's gotta hurt, you know? I'm hoping that, you know, like you said, they're compiling more information or they're getting more people involved, or and they're really gonna stick it to them. I hope to God that happens. I really do, you know, for everybody's sake. But I guess I'm just appalled by the level that Army has gone to. I mean, not that not that I'm downplaying it, but you know, a lot of times you hear of, oh, you know, this celebrity would, you know, try to seduce women and then he would have his way with them and that was it. But like this dude is just like talking about cutting him up and eating him and like doing all sorts of heinous things that, you know, surpass anything I would think of. And he's just doesn't seem to be catching a lot of crap for it at the moment, you know?
Yeah, he doesn't. It's so weird too, that family. I was When we were talking about his grandfather, Armand, who was apparently instrumental in the Watergate scandal as well. He used to
Yeah,
give
yeah,
illegal campaign donations to politicians and stuff like that. I kept thinking of, the Rolling Stones song "Sympathy for the Devil." Nice
yeah,
to meet you. Like I've been through all of this junk and I survived, kind of a deal. Like I orchestrated all these awful things, and that's what it feels like with this family. Like they under subversively doing all this junk, and you're like, oh my gosh, still going, still going strong.
yeah.
I
It
mean,
seems like nothing's sticking to him, you know?
nothing. And yeah, Michael threatens Casey with legal action if she keeps fabricating these stories. It's like, I'm pretty sure if, yeah, what's his name, Edward Epstein, a great author and journalist, if
Yeah,
he knows enough to come forward about this family and the shenanigans they've been getting into, he's going to tell you the truth.
yeah,
He's backing a lot of this up.
yeah. That was pretty cool too, that he came forward and said his piece, because
Mhm.
he apparently spent a lot of time with Armin, and saw all the stuff that he was doing, bribing people and doing all kinds of nefarious things,
Mhm.
that no one knew about. But it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy to me. I mean, you hear about, families that are generational criminals or whatever, mafia related stuff. And I have no idea what this is like. I obviously I grew up in a home where we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. I can't
Right.
even imagine what it's like to, you know, have that have that kind of stuff in front of you, and you looking up to these people, you know? I
Mhm.
I just hope it stops now. I don't know. I don't know much about Army's own family.
Mhm.
Doesn't seem like they talk about his ex-wife and his kids too much, but hopefully he doesn't have much of an influence on them, or his family doesn't, because I would love for all of this to stop with him, basically. You
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah,
don't
this
pass
new
this on.
generation, just yeah, clean slate, just go move forward
Yeah.
and yeah, be
I
good
would have
humans.
liked to hear from his ex-wife too, but I understand, you know, she probably doesn't want to incur the wrath either,
Mhm.
depending on
Yeah.
what she knows or what she's been exposed to.
Yeah, that's fair. She's got to probably play nice with him, at least for the
She's got to
duration.
protect her children. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what's most important to her, I'm sure.
Well, the cool thing was that we said earlier, they talked about the benefits of coming forward, not just the scary stuff, coming
Yeah.
forward to prevent, encourage, and to, help other people know what the signs are for this kind of stuff. And even Casey, she said, I refuse to be silenced. I was like, you go, girl.
Heck yeah.
that's that's it. And I was also reminded, it's kind of funny, as you know, but our listeners don't know, I'm a big fan of Pastor Rick Warren, and he always says that your greatest ministry will come out of your greatest pain, and that's what they've really done, above
Oh
and
yeah.
beyond that. Yeah, can't applaud these ladies enough, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's huge because, for every time that you see something like this, I'm sure there's 10 more stories that you don't see,
Mm-hmm.
so to be able to educate people to see the signs, and to maybe even inspire them to have the boldness to walk away, is huge, because the more you can shine a light on this kind of stuff, the more we can rid ourselves of it. That's how I
Right,
feel anyway.
the cockroaches scatter when the light turns on.
That's right.
you know Definitely need to keep these light. And of course, it was not funny, but it was funny. They did have to state that uh, Michael and Drew, Army's parents, declined interview or didn't respond to interview
Yeah,
requests,
and
and
so
then
did
Army
Army.
did. Yeah,
Yeah, of
so
course they did.
I wonder why. That's
Yeah.
interesting. But I did want to ask you what this was like from a male perspective, watching the whole documentary and seeing this crazy stuff.
it was weird. Like I honestly just kept feeling like I was watching, gosh, a episode of Mindhunter or something. Like it was literally just like they were talking about a serial killer. You know, it kind of felt like that to me because I just, you know, you hear about the things that he did and how he acted, and as a guy, I have nothing to relate to. Like I have no idea what spurred him on to do this kind of stuff or any of that. So that was kind of weird. Um, and then just seeing the emotion on these women's faces when they're recounting, you know, what he did and how he did things and all that stuff. I felt horrible. You know, I'm a dad. Obviously, you know, my daughter's not, she's not old enough to be dating anybody, thankfully. But I'm gonna get to that point, you know, somewhere where she's gonna date somebody, and oh my God, if that was if one of those women were my daughter, I don't know that I would be able to hold back just going vigilante on Army, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just because the level of depravity is just so great there. And and it's something that those women are gonna carry with them forever. You know, when something that traumatic happens to you, it never goes away. It's always there, whether you recognize it or not. You know, and his aunt found that out when she was doing that that show that the guy approached her or whatever, but it's always there, you know, and that's something that's really disturbing and sad to me is that someone who's that crappy of a person can have such a long lasting effect on someone else's life. You know, I think obviously they need to move forward from it and heal from it and stuff like that, but just makes you wish that the people you meet who are just kind and loving people could have that big of an impact. But for some reason, it's always the bad stuff that just sticks with you like that, you know?
That's true. It's going to affect their relationships forever in some way or
Everything.
another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, when someone goes to war and they see atrocities and people dying and things, people getting blown up and all sorts of stuff, they carry that forever. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how many, I don't know what the statistics are, but you know, how many combat veterans have PTSD because of what they witnessed or what they went through? Similar kind of stuff. You know, that's something they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Same with these women, you know. I don't know what that's necessarily going to look like for them, but I really do hope that they get some sort of closure in that Army gets some sort of consequence for what he's done. I think that'll really help their healing process for sure.
Right. And I did too. I kind of was hoping that they would relook at the like intimate partner violence laws,
Hmm.
because I always wonder too if that's kind of one of those holdups, you're like, well, it started out as consensual, but it's, it ended up not being consensual or
Yeah.
whatever. Like all those semantics or whatever. But
Well,
yeah.
that's what these people always do too. They put that spin on it. Oh, well, you know, they agreed to it. So yeah, it was a little crazy and you know, people have their kinks, but you know, the girls were fine with it at the time. And that's something that the argument they always use,
Hmm.
you know, which I understand, you know, sometimes you have to be careful with this stuff. There are people that on the other side will accuse someone of something that they didn't do
Hmm.
or will accuse someone to, you know, jam them up in one way or another. But when you have this level of evidence, I really hope that that argument doesn't hold any water.
For sure. And yeah, the consistencies in the accounts, that he signed his own warrant on that one, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like he's got enough people with very similar stories to show that he had a pattern of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I hope it turns out well for the women that were involved, and I wish that the documentary had some more closure at the end too. It kind of leaves you hanging because it's still ongoing, which is understandable because it's, something that's unfolding right now. But sometimes you watch those things and you like to have a happy ending, like, oh yeah, well, he was sentenced to life in prison or something, and you're like, oh, okay, good. Now I go to sleep and I feel better. But
Right. Yeah, like those
we're gonna have to
Dateline.
see how this plays out in front of us,
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I guess if we do get some updates, we'll add them in. We'll add some episodes on that. Well, it is funny when these documentarians do take on the job, though. Sometimes that puts a fire under the police. So
Yeah,
maybe
it's true.
they'll speed it up or do something,
Yeah, if
announce
there's no
something.
they always say, if there's no court involved, there's always the court of public opinion too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that'll help kind of push things along to have all these people like, hey, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And listeners, I'm gonna go a little big sister on you right now. They keep putting joinonelove.org at the end of all the episodes, and the website has some great tips on relationships as well as what to look for, the red flags that you can see early on in a relationship. I highly recommend going to look at it. So yeah, joinonelove.org, highly recommend it. Great information. And if you believe in what they're doing, you can donate too. So cool stuff. If you like what we're doing, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, where you can leave us 5-star reviews on both things. And we're on pretty much every other podcast platform that you can think of. So if you're listening to us right now, please subscribe. Oh, and if you're on YouTube, please thumbs up and subscribe. It's funny, we're like totally legit now. Discovery LLC just hit us with a copyright infringement hit. So yeah,
Yep,
show us some
we've
support.
made it, guys. We've got Discovery Plus scared, coming after us.
Which is funny because we as you know, we don't show any pictures, we don't borrow
No.
any of their data, none of their video, none of their audio, nothing. So that was kind of funny. Anyway.
Yeah, typical big fish on YouTube behavior there.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, If you want to share your story or have an idea for a topic, you can email us at sincerelytactlesspod@gmail.com, tweet at us at sinceretactless, or even head to anchor.fm/sincerelytactless. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for riding with us on this crazy train and not losing your lunch. Until next time, may all your relationships be safe. Take care.